Good morning again. It always amazes me how when I start to research something and then I start noticing things on the radio, I didn't realize how many songs had words about storms or going under, and you'll see it kind of goes with this today. But before I start, I want you to know who you're dealing with up here today. Last Sunday was Father's Day, and my daughter Gretchen ran off this paper for my grandson Marius to fill out about Grandpa. And one of the words was, who is Grandpa's favorite superhero? Grandma. So you're dealing with a superhero this morning. Some of you may remember that I was supposed to be the speaker on April the 8th, the first Sunday after Easter. However, my dad passed away on April the 7th, Saturday. So my brother and I flew to Florida to help my mom close up their winter house and bring her back home. When I saw today's theme, Peace Be Still, and the theme for that Sunday that I was supposed to speak was Peace Be With You, I thought, maybe I can use part of that message. I already had it ready, but I got to looking at it and I thought, nope, that's not going to work. Just because peace is in both themes does not mean it's the same message. So then I started reading the scripture that today's message is based on, and I remembered a message I'd given 7 years ago and thought, maybe I could use part of that one. So do I sound like I'm lazy or resourceful? Resourceful, I hope. Well, as it turns out, I couldn't use that message alone either. So today's scripture and the message that I used 7 years ago both take place on the Sea of Galilee. Both involve Jesus, his disciples, a boat, and a storm. Now, the Sea of Galilee is really more like a big lake. It's larger than most lakes, but you really wouldn't consider it a sea. However, because of its location in the Rift Valley, the winds come down from Mount Hermon and sweep across the water, whipping up the waves in such a hurry, causing the Sea of Galilee to act like a sea when a storm whips up all of a sudden. The message from 7 years ago was the first of 4 sermons based on the book by John Ortberg entitled, If You Want to Walk on Water, You've Got to Get Out of the Boat. Some of you may remember we called it our Get Out of the Boat series. Kathy Cummings is the one that always, for several years in a row, she would choose a book, and then several of us would have a Sunday we would speak on that book. If you haven't read that book, I would highly recommend it. It's very good. Before I read the scripture that message was based on, I want you to put yourself in the scene. Use your imagination here. The disciples were in a fishing boat in the middle of the lake, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a storm. Imagine the thunder is crashing, the lightning is flashing, and the waves are rising higher and higher. Some of the disciples were professional fishermen, but it was taking everything they had just to keep the boat upright. So I'm now going to read from Matthew chapter 14, verses 25 to 32. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" When I gave this message before, the emphasis was that we need to get out of the boat and try new things. But for today's message, I'm focusing on the location of Jesus. In this scripture, he was out of the boat, walking on the water. He calls to Peter to join him, and Peter was fine until he took his eyes off of Jesus. Then he saw the storm and the waves. Fear took over, and he began to sink. It's the same way with us. If we take our eyes off of Jesus during the storms of our lives, we will begin to sink. We need to have faith that Jesus will be there to catch us when we fall. He may not take us completely out of the storm. Sometimes those storms are what helps us to grow and be stronger. But he will be with us every step of the way, going through that storm. In the scripture that today's message is based on, "Peace, be still," Jesus is not out of the boat, as Betty has already said. He is in the boat. Jesus had been teaching on the shores of the Sea of Galilee all day. He and his disciples were tired, so they got in a boat to cross to the other side. These were fishing boats with very low sides to make it easier for the fishermen to cast their nets over the side. But it was also easier to swamp the boat. So once again, try to put yourself in this situation. This is from Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? Even after all the disciples had seen Jesus do up to this point, even after all the parables he had taught, even after all the innocent people he had freed from demonic oppression, the disciples still did not know who stood in their midst. In fact, they are so amazed at what they have just witnessed that all they can do is ask, "Who then is this?" They have gone from a fear for their lives to a fear, a reverent fear, of the man standing in front of them. For there is only one who can control the forces of nature, and that is God. So the disciples are beginning to realize that they are standing in the presence of one whose power goes far beyond anything they have ever witnessed before. Could this man be the Messiah? Is he the Christ? Almost exactly a year ago, beginning of July, my mom became very sick. She's a go-getter. She doesn't get sick very often. So when she said she wasn't feeling well, I knew something was up, and it lasted a couple days, and about the third day after she had told me she was sick, I called and nobody answered. And finally, late that evening, my dad called to say he had taken her to the hospital that morning and didn't let my brother or me know till the end of the day. We were not happy about that, but the doctor right off the bat thought it was a tick bite, but they couldn't be sure, so they ran tests, and she ended up in ICU in Portsmouth and then brought to ICU at the James in Columbus. And after 10 days of antibiotics and tests and everything, they finally came to the conclusion, yes, it was a tick bite. Not the Rocky Mountain spotted kind, not the Lyme's. I don't remember, it was some big long name, started with an R, but that's what it was. And she had developed mono along with it, so she was tired, breathing was, hard, but she came through it. The doctor said it was a miracle that she came through it. He said she was a walking miracle. Now, all during this time, it never once crossed my mind. It never once crossed my mind that she wouldn't make it. I didn't even think of that. Now, my dad wouldn't stay with us. My two girls and I, three of us live right here in Columbus. But rather than stay with one of us while he is visiting Mom in Columbus, nope, he had to drive back to Portsmouth every day. Well, during that time, he lost 20 pounds. Now, my dad not a big man, but he lost 20 pounds. Of course, we all think, okay, we all thought, and maybe it was, but we all thought it was stress. He wasn't eating right because Mom wasn't there to cook for him, But in October, when my parents went to Florida, they always go for like a month or so in the fall, and they come back for the holidays and then go back again after Christmas. But when they were down in October, my dad was playing golf. He swung the club and heard something pop in his neck. And he had a lot of pain. Went to the doctor, and they said, you just pulled something, get some physical therapy, get a massage, whatever. But it didn't get any better. So they went back to Florida after Christmas, and my husband and I always go down in February and spend a couple weeks each winter. And my mom kept making the comment, I hope you have a good time when you come down. And I said, why wouldn't we? And she goes, well, Dad can't do a whole lot. And I said, do you want us to come? Maybe we're just going to be, a burden for you. Oh, no, I want you to come. So I hadn't seen Dad, since Christmas. We went down the end of February, about the middle of February. And the first day we got there, we went out to eat, and I'm not exaggerating at all. My dad sat at the table like this. He had to hold his head up. And long story short, it didn't get any better. And we got there on Monday, on Friday, he went into the hospital. And he had broken vertebrae in his neck since October. But they also discovered he had stage 4 lung cancer. Now, I never had the same feeling with him that I had with my mom. People would say, how do you think he is? Well, I think he's okay, but however, I did not, I was sad. I think I knew what was coming, but I also had this peace that whatever happened, he was going to be okay, we were all going to be okay. And part of it, I think, was about 3 years ago when Dad turned 80, he started making these comments. Now, your mom and I might not be here in 5 years or whatever. I said, Dad, don't talk like that. Well, it's true. It's true. One of us, or maybe both of us, we may not be here. And he would always say, but I want you to know I have no regrets. No regrets. He said, I have a wonderful family. I've had a great career. We've traveled all over the world. He says, I have no regrets in this life. So I think that helped us through too. We all have our storms in life. They can be spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, financial, I think I said social. We have loneliness, confusion, grief. There are so many things that go on in our life that just create chaos. And Jesus asked, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" No matter where you are in your storm, or maybe you're one of the lucky ones that's in a calm right now, but no matter where you are, Jesus is with you. You may be out of the boat, floundering in the waves. All you have to do is reach out your hand, and He is there. You may be in the boat, struggling to keep it afloat, but remember, Jesus is in the boat with you. My point is that no matter what storm you are facing, we are all in the same boat, and Jesus is in that boat with us, or on the water with us, no matter where we are. And that's a good place to be. And He says, "Peace, be still," to the wind and the waves. Peace, be still. He speaks to our fearful hearts. And by our faith, there will be a great calm.